Tonight our lesson is on adding integers. Let's start by defining what integers are. Integers are the whole numbers, and the whole numbers start with 0, and then they go up by 1. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. Those are the whole numbers. So the integers are the whole numbers plus their opposites. So the opposite of 1 would be -1. The opposite of 2 is -2, and so forth. And 0 is its own opposite. So this would be the set of integers. So 1/2 is not an integer. 12.2 is not an integer. But 11 is an integer. 99 is an integer. -43 is an integer, etc. And remember that when we talked about opposites, if you take the opposite of a number, it's the number that's the same distance from 0 except on the opposite side of 0. So if I have the number 4, the opposite of 4 would be -4, and both of those numbers are 4 units away from 0. Conversely, if we had -4, the opposite of -4 would be +4. And we would write it like this: the opposite of -4, and that would equal 4, this number on the other side. All right, so here we have a number line and a couple of problems to do. So we're going to add these integers together, 10 minus 5 plus 2. So we'll start with 10 on the number line, and if we go -5, we can imagine that if this was a frog jumping, okay, that first jump was a 10, so he jumped all the way to here. But then a -5 jump would be he jumps back towards the starting point. So that, in effect, that's the same as subtracting 5. And then a +2 jump would be to here. And so this would add up, if we use the number line, that the frog would end up 7 units away from the starting point. Now, this problem here is actually the exact same problem, but I just rewrote it. Notice that instead of putting -5, I just put plus -5. Okay, and that's the same thing as subtracting 5, is just adding, when you add a negative number, you just move that many, you move that distance in the negative direction or in the left direction. So these two problems are identical. All right, so whenever you see a minus a number or minus an integer, you can always change it to addition and just write it as its opposite. So what I mean by that is that instead of subtracting 5, I can go, all right, I'm just going to add the opposite of 5, and that would give me the same thing. All right, so here we have another one. We have -4 minus 2 plus 5. Let's start by changing the -2 to plus a -2. So all we're going to do is add, you see? And I think it's a good idea when we're adding and subtracting integers, whenever you have a subtraction of an integer, you could always just change it to an addition of its opposite. That way we're just adding all the time, because it's going to give us the same answer. All right, so the first jump is -4, right here. So starting at 0, if this was a frog jumping, he jumped to the left. So now he's at -4. Now, that -2, we changed it to plus -2. So that means he's going to jump 2 more to the left. So he's at -6. And then a +5 jump would be 5 in this direction. So he'd end up at -1. So all of this adds up to a -1. All right, so here we have a simple addition of a -10 plus 10. All right, so first of all, what do you notice about these numbers? Well, if you notice their opposites, you're correct, because one number is a +10 and one is a -10. And they're both the same distance from 0. They're both 10 units away from 0. So when we add these together, what number do we get? That's right, we get 0. So if you were to do this on the number line, the first jump was a -10, the frog jumps over this way, and he's at -10, but then he jumps back to the right 10 units, so he's back to 0, back to where he started from. All right, so This is meant to show us that opposites always add to 0. Opposites always add up to 0. Okay? All right, so here we have another addition problem, but there's no number line. We're just going to add. All right, let's start by changing this -2. We're going to change it to a plus the opposite of 2, because that's the same thing. All right, so now I'm just adding up all the numbers. So if I go 7 plus a -2, if that was on a number line, that would give me 5. And then if I add another -2, so I would still be going left on the number line. This is the same as 5 minus 2, so that puts me at 3. And then I'm going to go plus 4. So this adds up to 7. Okay? All right, now you try one. Okay, actually we have a couple of them. Go ahead, copy these down, pause your video, add them together, and then restart to check your answer. Welcome back from pausing the video. We have a -4 plus 3. So on a number line, if I jumped 4 to the left from 0, I'd be at -4. But then if I jump back to the right 3, I'd end up at -1. Okay, now here we have the opposite of -4. Remember that first slide we were talking about that? The opposite of a -4 would be a +4. So this is actually equal to 4 and then plus 3. So for this one, we get 7 as our answer. Okay, here's a little self-quiz. Write it down, pause your video, then restart to check your answers. Welcome back from pausing the video. So here, on the first problem, I'm subtracting a -5, or that's the opposite of -5. That would be the same as +5. So this problem actually comes out to be 5 plus 5, which is 10. How'd you do on that one? Okay, well, if you didn't get it, that's okay. We're just practicing this now. We'll do a lot more practice before you even quiz this stuff at all. All right, so now let's go number 2. We start with -7, and we're adding 4. So if I'm at -7 and I go to the right 4, that would put me at -3. And then I'm going to add a -2, so that would be a jump back in the negative direction of 2, so that would put me at -5. So number 2 equals -5. All right? All right, that's all for tonight. Remember, read some books.